Peace, melanated family. I hope everyone's doing good out there. This is another broadcast of Melanated Solutions Media. You have myself, Kashama Sankofa. We have the beautiful Bliss with us as well as Brother Duke. And
Greetings.
Without further ado, we're going to get into some real quick housekeeping. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, family. Check us out on YouTube as well as Facebook. And also remember that we do open up the chat so that you can join us in a face-to-face discussion. Our topic for tonight is the conspiracy against Black people. But before we get into all of that, current events and more, I'm going to have Duke come in with our family feedback from the last show.
Hey everyone, so last time we all joined together, we were discussing truth and Black reconciliation. I just have a couple of comments I want to highlight here. It says from Michael Presley that Black people have to first stop hating their Black African features. I shade to that, brother. We also have comments from Tyrone Jerome Harris, not only asking the question of will there ever truly be a sense of equality for all people in America, which my personal thoughts on that matter, we'll discuss that another time. But he also mentioned now you done hit the nail on the head, bro, at the hour and 26 mark in 3 seconds. And I checked the timestamp I was talking, so shout out to me. And lastly, but not least, we also have a comment from Mr. Holmes, who said that it's so hard to decenter white language and ideology. Now, when we try to have discourse with ourselves and define ourselves, we have to be conscious of these particular factors. And Alicia said, lastly, practice showing each other grace is the key to success. So, much shout out to our family feedback session. With that being said, if Adam could roll clip for our current events this evening.
Well. Obama. That's y'all. That's y'all man, ain't it?
He has been showing his biracial ass this week, just entirely. Y'all heard about his comments about defunding the police, right?
The snappy slogan, you mean?
Yes.
Snappy slogan. Yeah, we've heard. Obama's dangerous. I'm just gonna say it. He's dangerous. I mean, I mean, we might as well get right to it. A snappy slogan. As many Black people have lost their lives in the summer of George Floyd, you're going to call defunding the police, even if you don't agree with the idea of it, or you think that we need to rethink what that means. To call it a snappy slogan. Yeah,
he's basically being used as like this Pied Piper for Black people to like just lead us off a cliff, pretty much. You mentioned something before we got on live, Bliss. You reminded me that he drunk that nasty Flint water, and it's like,
or did he?
And it's like now you telling us that you'll take the vaccine, like, but you drunk nasty Flint water, so you ain't saying much. You'll put anything in your body.
He didn't drink the water. So let's be clear that he's the wrangler. That's what I call him. That's my term for him, the wrangler. So
Negro
Black people kind of get out of pocket, and we start to do anything radical, he wrangles us back in. So the NBA strike, now he's telling us to basically shut up about defunding the police. And then the next day he came back and told folks he was going to go on camera and take the vaccine to build trust. And my comment was, yeah, like you drank that Flint water that you did not drink, that stunt that he pulled with drinking the Flint water while people in Flint are still sick and still don't have clean water. So he's dangerous because too many of us feel like he's the sacred cow and we can't criticize him. He's above reproach, and he's not. He's elitist, and he is establishment in a way that is very, very dangerous to us, because there's too many of us that take what Obama says as they take it as gospel and they go with it. So for him to he's been on it this week, the vaccine and this whole thing with defund the police, he's a problem. He's really a
Yeah.
problem, and and to have been the president, and to know the situation that has gone on. Because remember, Trayvon happened under his watch, so solutions. You have ideas for solutions, and what is it that you have to lose? You're not in a position where you lose it. You can't lose a position. So to be doing what he's doing, to be voluntarily or being used, because to be used to me means you're being paid or there's something else that you're getting out of it, is he's turning out to be treacherous.
Well, speaking of the vaccine, excuse me, you see they talking about a stimulus package being contingent upon taking
I
the
didn't see that.
vaccine.
No, yeah,
Well, that's
that's
the proposal.
it's a proposal, yeah, that you'll get $1,500 stimulus after you take the vaccine.
I don't think
Bless
it'll.
face.
I don't think it'll go through.
Why don't you think it'll go through?
Because you always have the idea of white lash, yeah, you can't upset white people too much. It's one of the main reasons why the Democratic Party barely won, this election by the hairs on their chin, because they couldn't fully, go into a black agenda. They had to try to toe that line and pacify, racist whites. So with this same thing, yeah, there's too many white people who are already, bucking, the idea of mandatory vaccinations, hell, even mandatory mask wearing, shutdowns. They're the main ones that are bucking that. They're bucking it, more than we buck the cops. Honestly, we really should have that energy the way they be having that energy.
But what they do is they make your job contingent upon you getting a vaccine. So if you work in healthcare now, most healthcare workers already take flu shots. They don't really have a choice. You take a flu shot or you can't work at institution ABC or hospital ABC. So that's a way of control. And keep in mind, the UK is rolling out next week the vaccine. The minister, they have a minister for deployment. I even hate the word deployment being used in association with the vaccine, because when I think deployment, I think war. So the minister of deployment for the vaccine in the UK suggested the week before they let us know they were going to roll it out, that it may be possible that in order to have a social life, basically to go to a bar or to the theater or to the restaurant, you would need to have a valid vaccination record. So the way that they manipulate is, okay, the government will stay out of it, but we let all these private industries control whether or not you can have access to these resources or to these jobs. So that's one way that they're probably going to use too.
That's how I think it's gonna go more so. It's gonna be a capital driven, you know what I'm saying? Not more so like, because this stimulus is something that people need. You know what I'm saying? People are they're nutting up right now, and soon they'll be cutting up if something isn't done to bring relief to a lot of people. And I just don't, when I look at the population of the UK and look at the white folks over here, I just don't see the same breed. You just cannot put mandates on the white people in America like you can in the UK. For one thing, it's one of the most heavily armed and crazy population of white people on the planet. They're much more subdued over there when it comes to how they deal with their government, even though you are seeing protests in Europe now and they're turning up, mind you, but they don't have the capacity to really, really turn up and to really act crazy like them white men in Michigan did.
Well, that's
I don't think so.
Speaking of mandates, we also got Kevin Hart's response to Tariq Nasheed. Considering Tariq Nasheed's platform, Kevin Hart has some criticism for him. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Kevin Hart was being very he had a lot of energy for Tariq that he doesn't have for other people who actually outright attack him, namely white people. The Academy Awards and the LGBT community. he didn't have the smoke for none of them. But I think all Tariq said was, I didn't think it was funny, which is like just what any critic, anybody says. And he kind of went for the whole movement and was like, dropped the power to the people on Twitter, kind of, like, and that's what a lot of people responded to. Like, hold on, Kevin, if you got something to say to Tariq about your art, why bring in the movement, or why bring in the whole power to the people? Like, they're doing him like they do Farrakhan. It's like, in order to prove to the handlers that you can be trusted, you have to diss Farrakhan, or you have to distance yourself from Farrakhan some kind of way. Farrakhan is quite old and not as active as he used to be. I'm not going to compare Tariq to Farrakhan, but in optic wise, image wise, as far as the controversy that he generates among white people in mainstream media, he's one of those figures that Kevin is earning some biscuits right now by attacking and going back and forth with him.
Just to add to that, speaking of which, you know who else just recently unfollowed Tariq, who I was surprised was even following him in the first place? Good old Obama. He just unfollowed Tariq.
Oh!
That he unfollowed him. My shock was that he was following him in the first place. So I guess, whatever. I just thought Kevin Hart should
that was back probably when he first got in 2008, and he was acting all blackety black with Beyonce and all that, and singing Al Green and stuff. That's when he probably followed Tariq, not quite knowing how thick things were gonna get.
Oh, well, he didn't do his homework, but he just recently unfollowed him. So,
well,
Smokey.
Speaking, I feel like it's a perfect tie-in, because we're talking about, and I don't use this language in general, but I know people talk about quote unquote fragile masculinity and what Kevin Hart and Tariq Nasheed is going through. But then we have Smokey Norfolk and his 16-year-old son, and then we see what develops, the psychology and the psychosis that Black males have to go through in this society. So 16-year-old boy climbs into his father's lap, goes to sleep, and it has set conversations on male and female sides of the gender ablaze, as far as whether or not this is a proper thing to do, whether or not it's something that should be supported, and people are looking at it with a questionable lens and eye. And here we are in 2020, worried about sons hugging their fathers.
So can we don't we have the photo, Adam, before we just go to talking about it? Let's everybody look at it and let the audience see. Adam, can you bring that photo back up for us? If you can't, just tell us no in the chat or something.
Yeah, I think it was part of the entire roll, so you can't bring that up at the moment.
Okay. Well, I'll describe the photo in more details, because he was asleep. They were both laying on the couch, and his son was laying on top of his chest while they were asleep or whatever. My thoughts are actually, Bliss. I mean, I have to keep referring to things that you say before the live, because no. I thought the same thing when I saw it. Like, well, what had he been through that day, right? So we don't know the context of it, and I don't know none of the context around it. Why was he, sleeping on top of his father's chest? I just think it was a very private moment, and I don't think it should have been shared, because honestly, I think 16 is past the age to be sleeping on your parents' bosom. Whether you're a male or female, and whether it's your mother or your father. I grew up with both parents, and was able to have affection. We didn't hug like me and my daddy didn't hug if we hadn't seen each other for a while, or whatever. Just basic emotion, affection. But I don't think and that's why I say I don't know what happened that day. The boy,
so I got a question, because I kind of disagree, right? With you.
And then he comes home, just had a near-death experience, and he's dealing with that and happens to fall asleep. Okay, that's a moment, but that's not for everybody. Doesn't know what happened. We don't understand it. So why was it shared?
Right. I agree.
I kind of disagree with you as far as the age. Now, Bliss said something that I thought was pretty interesting and deserved introspection. You said that before we went live, you said if he was 11, then it probably wouldn't have been an outrage or a talk about this if the boy was 11 years old and climbed into his father's lap. But and like Kashama just mentioned, you say you think 16 is too old for anyone, and I disagree, because I've been looking at relationships between parents and children's for quite some time, and I know, especially with mothers and daughters, like you can be 28 years old and climb into your mother's lap, and that's still considered normal to a lot of degrees. Like we see that in TVs, in commercials and movies and things like that. It's considered this intimacy and bonding. It's not looked at as somehow a detriment to development of a human being to be that intimate with your parent or guardian, unless you are a male. And so I question, what is the age? You said that 16 is too old. So what is the age? If 11 is fine and 16 is too old, then what's the age?
Well, I think
should we be telling our children?
Well, like Kashama said, it's about what are we looking at? We're just seeing this shot, but we don't know the full context. And even with what you said, with women being able to be in bed with their parents or in the arms of their parents, those are even in moments. That's not a consistent behavior that happens. And I thought he was 11. I'm going to be very honest. I had seen the picture on the internet. I didn't pay attention. I was like, oh,
little boy. He does look young.
I didn't think about it because I thought he was like 11. So when I found out he was 16, I did kind of go, okay, this is a little different with him being 16. Those are in moments. It's not like somebody's consistently laying up on the bosom of their parent when they're 28, 16 years old. So I really can't comment on what is happening here because I don't know the full scope. And I agree with you also, Kashama. Why is it posted? Why would you can't have a moment with your child that you can't keep to yourself? Why is that being posted? I don't. So there's a lot of questions that I have surrounding that particular.
And in regards to age, Duke, I wouldn't give it a hard stop. You see what I'm saying? Because now it's causing me to reflect, right? I'm going to try to figure out, well, at what point did my parents stop, hugging me as much or stop, touching me as much? You know what I'm saying? And so I have to realize it was a gradual thing, and it generally came as the lack of need from me to have to do all that. Because usually it's initiated by the child. So, I mean, there's something going on in the development. Like let's say, what's happening in this moment? Is this a consistent thing where he needs this type of emotional affirmation?
The comment section said that it's not. I mean, his caption for this made it very clear this is not a consistent thing. This is literally it was a surprise to Smokey, and so he captured this moment, and he was taken aback, and he said that he enjoyed this moment. Like it's just like this was because I haven't been. He said something about my son hasn't reached back to climb into my lap since he was like 16 months old. Like that's the last time that he remembers like holding his son. So it's just something to think about and consider. I think for me, I would love to have a discussion on platonic male intimacy, like Sonia Ross mentioned, because I mean, there's loads of articles that just speak about, specifically when it comes to Black males, how Black men are literally dying from a lack of touch, or how Black males are socialized to only recognize physical touch with the individual through violence. Like they don't know how to do intimacy unless it's like punching or like some type of hit or violent act. Like there's just multiple studies that show this from Black scholars that talk about the development of Black males in the society. And I just think it's interesting that individuals will say 16 is too old. So when you ask the question, what is the cutoff point? Then we're back to like this theology discussion, as opposed to recognizing that we are socially developed around these things in this society. So that's just my particular point on the matter.
But I'm sorry, but keep in mind, if this isn't consistent and the son went there to his father for that bit of intimacy in that moment, then he still feels safe enough to do that. In whatever emotional state he was in that brought him there, he still feels safe enough to go to his father for that. So that's it. Sorry.
Until you see this comment section.
Oh yeah, I saw
you see the comment section. Until you see how the community is responding.
I would love for Sonia to actually join us at some point, because I know you have a lot to offer on that topic. But that's actually not the topic of today's discussion. it is the conspiracy against Black people. And so, I'm sorry, what was that?
I said indeed.
Well, okay, so I thought of this topic because I saw a post on social media that said, "Could you date a conspiracy theorist?" And I saw all these Black people saying no, 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 and I'm like, what the hell are wrong with that? The people who are consistently the most, victimized by conspiracies, right, are sitting here saying, are shutting down the idea of people who are aware of conspiracies. And so a lot of times they would mention a lot of disinformation that is put out, about reptilian elites or whatever, things that may be very far-fetched, as a way of shutting down conspiracies, period, as if, like Tuskegee didn't happen. What are y'all thoughts on that?
Well, I think the first thing is, I'm still stuck on the general question of could you date a conspiracy theorist? And I think for me, it's similar to the previous conversation. It's about that context, because I think we've all dated conspiracy theorists, because some of us are conspiracy theorists about various different things. Like, I know in it's not a conspiracy anymore because it's a proven fact, but some of these Chinese places are serving up rat and pigeon and and everything else, but it was a conspiracy theory first. And my family would have been dating people that have been thinking that for years. So it's just, we have different levels, if you will, when it comes to the conspiracy. So that's just like my first thought. It's just, it depends on what we're talking about.
Bliss?
I don't even buy into the idea of that, a conspiracy theory, because it just means you haven't gotten enough information to prove the idea, or you just disagree with it. I don't, this whole idea of a conspiracy theorist, like you just said, like Tuskegee didn't happen. Like all of these atrocities don't happen consistently, like there aren't micro and macro aggressions and think tanks that plan against us that have done this consistently as long as we've been on in here. So what, if somebody even asked that question, that's probably like the end of discussion.
Now that I think about it, I should have shared a link or to the trailer to the show on Netflix called The Family.
You gotta thank Sean, it's true. In various places. I ain't gonna say all, but we know something.
Yeah, it's proven. But no, have you all seen The Family on Netflix?
No. I've been watching a lot of home improvement shows on Netflix, to be honest.
That's a good show. Check it out, The Family. And it's about this powerful non-profit, for-profit, of course, organization that and it's Christian based. It's, of course, it's white power Christian based.
Oh, I'm not watching it.
You need to watch it. This organization
where's the enticing part of this story?
You will see how this organization has its tentacles in so many governments around the world, in industries, the presidents. Like, this is a real live organization, and this Netflix show, gives you a lot of information about it. This is very interesting. Check it out. For people who talk about conspiracy theorists or theories, Deshaun Farad, Brother Hotep, he said, I watched The Family. Excellent show.
And they think it's an excellent show. I may watch episode 1 or 2. If it hooks me in the first episode or 2, we good. But white and Christian, it's just already I'm disinterested.
Well,
but
let me tell you something. I want to know what all of these groups, all of these sides are doing. Because you'd be surprised. Most of us, when we access any kind of information, we get it from mainstream media. That's how people function. So if it doesn't come from mainstream media, it doesn't exist. So, or if it doesn't agree with their theoretical ideas or their ideas, they don't want to know. But I listen to all sides. I'm going to tell you, I go on those conservative, right-wing, radical sites all the time. I'm always on there because I want to know what they're doing. I want to know what they're saying. In fact, let me just share this bit with you since we were talking about vaccine and COVID, do you know that these organizations now, because they don't know what's going to happen with the United States, are preparing their people and telling them to save up money to start bribing non-white doctors for false vaccine certifications? That's the move that they're making. I can't make this up, but you don't know that until you go and you see what's happening with these other groups, because all the information is hidden in plain sight. So I'm just, you recommended the family. I recommend that you go to some of these conservative sites and seeing what they're planning on doing, because it ain't always about grabbing a gun.
And the Parler app. There's an app called Parler.
I've been on
Parler. It's a white right wing, haven. Sean Hannity and all of them over there partying. But so the first conspiracy that we will be going over is Kawan Charles. And we are seeing in the media that they are calling him Kawan Bobby Charles, but I read that only his parents called him Bobby. So I don't know why they're doing it in the media, but little brother Kawan Charles was only 15. He was another young looking 15. He looked quite younger than his age. And he went missing. He went missing on October 30th. His parents reported it to the police. Now, this is where the conspiracy begins. And people will say, well, why are you calling this a conspiracy? This is where it begins. The police would not look for him. The police would not, they didn't file an Amber Alert. They didn't go in with missing persons protocol. They told the mother that he was probably off gallivanting like Negro boys, Negro males do when they get a certain age, right? And so it wasn't until later that they found out that Kawan was last seen with a young white boy who they're calling his friend. I'm not going to do that because no. But a white male, actually, because he's 17 years old. So I will go to say a young white man named Gavin Irving and his mother, Janet Irving, who has a rap sheet a mile long. And even her father said she was trash. And that whatever happened to Kawan Charles, she brought it on herself. Those were her father's words. So once the body was found, it was said that he drowned. However, he was found in ankle deep water. It was apparent that there was a blunt force blow to his head, and very graphic footage was released of his photo when they found the body, and you can see for yourself that there's damage done to his face that is not really consistent with with drowning or drowning or whatever. Yeah. So there it is. That's the Kawan Charles story, and I was just wondering, what all do y'all know about it, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, we covered Kawan in a current events about a week or two ago, and we actually, in that particular stream, we showed the image of him and all I know is they also consider this young man the second Emmett Till, considering like the narrative of this story. It's like he was home, everyone thought he was home, and then all of a sudden he's gone missing and he's with some white people and he's drowning in a lake somewhere, quote unquote. But the body is so mutilated. It is so the body is mutilated, and it's not consistent with the idea of any type of drowning or even running into like some jagged rocks or something in ankle deep water. This body looks like it was left around for almost a week or something before it was found, and that's not consistent with the story about how long he was missing to the time he was found. And the way Black people die in this country so often. And so for it to be so often that justice is not prevailed. I forget the young man's name at this moment, but we also had the young man who was wrapped up inside of a rug inside of a gym court
we're gonna get
behind bleachers at some point. And then we also have the numerous hangings and lynchings that have cropped up within the last 2 years, and people are still calling this suicide.
Well, no, not even the last 2 years, dude. Well, there were I guess the lynchings picked up at kind of like what you would call epidemic rates around 2005, because Black men were being found hung in Mississippi. in a small radius actually. And there's another conspiracy because the coroner in that Mississippi County, I could find it later on, but the coroner was ruling all these deaths suicide, and it was like plain as day that they weren't suicides and that he was doing this as a matter of routine.
I'm thinking about I remember a judge who was apparently found in water not too long ago in New York, who was proceeding over a large case, and she was supposedly on a jog, I believe, and then all of a sudden drowned in that. But it's like the court cases that she was proceeding over had things to do, if I'm not mistaken, with the police departments up there, and it's just, we have a right to critique and be cautious of these particular stories and narratives because it's COINTELPRO was not that long ago, one. And it also was a huge investment by multiple factors, from federal government to local government, when it came to infiltrating Black Panther Party and in numerous different Black Power movements with police forces, with spies, with random individuals and Joe Blows from the street in order to create corruption in distrust within these organizations, and murders occurred, like straight up bombings. Like, this is not.
And I wanted to add one more thing about this case though before Bliss give her thoughts, because I forgot to add in that not only do they have a body, of course, but a woman called Kawan Charles' mother and told her about the experience that her son came and confessed that he was with what's his name, Gavin Irvin, and his mother, and that their car smelled like bleach. They had just bleached the car out.
What?
Now, surveillance footage shows or appears to show Kawan Charles going into a vehicle when he was last seen from his father's home voluntarily. Like, the vehicle pulled up and he actually ran to get inside. We still don't know the ins and outs of that whole scenario, but I mean, go ahead, Bliss, because I have some final thoughts on this that I'll get.
I mean, here's the problem with all of this is that it's very similar, Duke, in what you were referring to in the case with, is it Kendrick Johnson, who was wrapped up in the who was found, that was several years ago, whose family did get, I think they had gotten a second autopsy. But if you're in a city or a town where everybody is corrupt, then there's still a question of the legitimacy of the information you're getting, because Kawan Charles has had a second autopsy and they keep coming up with the fact that he drowned. And they're claiming that all of the damage that you saw to the body happened after
post-mortem.
That the damage happened while he was in the water, in the location. So that does not make sense. So my question now is, where's the toxicology report? What is taking so long with that? Was he drugged? What was going on? It's so many questions to that have not been answered with this case. But the main one is, why has the mother and the son that picked him up, why have they not been detained? Why haven't there been more questions asked? How is it that they had basically a brief questioning and they were allowed to go and they left town? So that's the other part of it. So,
and even the landlord who the landlord who owned the trailer that they rented, they left town. I don't think it wasn't like in the beginning of the month, it was like in the middle of the month, but he claimed that they were supposed to leave anyway, that they were already getting ready to leave. And I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either. So even with the second autopsy, if you get an autopsy in the same town where everybody's working to cover up the crime, then I think the family, I don't know if it's a lack of funds or what it is, but it's going to be a long time, I think, before you're going to get some answers with this Kawan Charles case, just like it was with the Kendrick Johnson case. I think you're going to have some outside entities. I think that body needs to be, if it's been buried, it needs to be exhumed and it needs to go someplace else.
Before we move on to the Kendrick Johnson, I think what really needs to happen is that, because for one, his body was not only found in ankle deep water, it was in a sugarcane field. And the way that it's set up, the sugarcane field is behind the trailer park, something like that. It would have been pitch dark back there. No reason for anyone to run back there or to walk back there or to go back there to cut through it or nothing, because you can't see anything.
Toxicology report.
Yeah. So, but even with that being said, at the very least, there's some type of child endangerment. You know what I'm saying? That she should be able to be held on due to the fact that the child was in her care. And something definitely happened. There was drug use, because that's another thing that the other woman's son said. But so Kendrick Johnson was out of Valdosta, Georgia, was found in Lowndes High School in 2000, I want to say 2010. I'm going to find that exact date. But anyway, he was found rolled up in a gym mat in the high school gym. Now, the issues with this is, one, they're claiming that he fell in the gym mat. The circumference or the diameter of the space inside of the gym mat was not big enough for him to fall into. He was basically squeezed into it. And there was also a blunt force to his head. And in addition to that, there's missing camera footage out of the gym. The camera footage has been manipulated, cut, spliced. And this was in 2013 when this happened.
And to also make note, it's also on record that this gym mat that he allegedly rolled himself up to and committed suicide by this accidental suicide is what has been ruled, was vertical. It was found vertical, standing up behind the bleachers, upright. So somehow this young man rolled himself, literally just standing up, rolled himself inside of a gym mat. And his face is so puffed in.
Well, the narrative is that he fell inside of the gym roll, and that because they're saying that he shared a pair of gym shoes with another student, and they, would hide the gym shoes up in the mats to share it, saying that he was reaching for the gym shoe, which makes no sense because his arm was not even long enough to reach down in there. So they're saying he was reaching down to the bottom, I guess, to get the gym shoes and fell in. His whole body just slid on in there.
Right. That's what they're saying. He fell in. That makes no sense whatsoever. But the continuation of the insanity was that remember the insanity of the autopsy and the fact that the body, they removed all the organs. So
yes,
when we talk about conspiracy theories, this is not theory. This is stuff that actually happened. The continuation of this insanity. So we're talking about a huge cover up. You got so many players, because if you got the person who's conducted, the coroner involved, and the mortician and the school and
the lead suspect in this particular case, some white boy, his father was a cop. And very influential in that particular town. So
he was a federal agent, actually.
I thought he was higher. Yeah, I thought he was federal too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at a lot of unanswered questions and a continued.
Also, the organs were missing after the parents requested another autopsy. The organs came back. The organs were missing, and he was filled with newspaper. Brother Deshaun Farad said that teeth were missing too. And he said study satanic rituals. Now, Kendrick Johnson case is interesting to me because of that missing organs element. And honestly, I think this is one of those instances where two conspiracies intersected at some point. One conspiracy was happening with the murder and the cover up, and while that was happening, somebody went ahead and took advantage of, I think, getting organs out the deal. I don't know.
Wow.
Because I don't think that the Bell brothers killed him for his organs. I think, that he was killed because of a dispute because of him actually dating or having some type of romantic involvement with one of the Bell brothers' girlfriends or ex-girlfriends. And the Bell brothers are the sons of the federal agent. So these are all theories for us to look at because they should be suspects.
So
But
we
do we call it theory when it's truth? Because
Well,
these facts aren't
it's
debatable.
proof that he was
That's all
murdered.
it is. Yeah, all of the facts about what happened with the autopsy and the coroner and all of those are facts. That's why when people start talking to me about conspiracy theories, it's just like you just don't have the facts yet. That's all. You just waiting you just don't have the information yet. This is not out of we're not pulling this from outer space. This stuff actually happened. This is documented. So that's why I kind of dismiss that because to me, I think that when people start calling things conspiracy theories, they're trying to be dismissive. That's just my feeling about it a lot of times.
Well, we're 40 minutes in, and I suggest we go over the facts of one more theory, and maybe possibly.
We got to go over these Atlanta murders.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we open up the chat, I think we can go ahead and start talking about a lot of the biomedical conspiracies when we open up to the audience, because I'm sure they'll have a lot to say about that. But speaking of facts and things that are documented, what do y'all know about the ATL murders, first of all? The Atlanta murders.
I am going to let you know that I personally never knew much. I actually wound up hearing about it for the first time about 3 years ago. And I was informed at that time about it would be Atlanta child murders, and it was majority Black children who were killed. I believe it was a white family that was alleged that were the suspects. I don't believe they were charged though. I believe that this went on to be.
Yeah, there was some white suspects, clan members. But Bliss, you had some thoughts on it? Or I mean, you wanted to share some of your information?
The only thing that I know of that I remember that there was talk about that kind of got silenced is I do remember in doing some research on it, this is a while ago, that Dick Gregory had suggested that part of the reason why those kids were being killed in Atlanta was that there was a bigger conspiracy and that they were being used back then to test organs and test sperm and test different things with those kids and using their bodies for experimentation. And who is there? Is it CDC or NIH is in Atlanta? Which
CDC is in Atlanta.
And CDC and Dick Gregory has suggested that it was way bigger than we thought, that those kids' bodies were actually being used for experimentation. They needed cells.
So this is another one of those instances where I see an intersection of conspiracies coming together to create the perfect storm of suffering for Black people. Let's begin with the fact that one, they're generally called the Atlanta child murders, but it wasn't just children who were killed. There were victims who were as old as in their 20s who were killed by these in these murders.
You went.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit that. So there were more than children, one, and they weren't just male. There were girls who were killed, little girls that were whose bodies were found as well. Now, a name that you should never forget, along with Dick Gregory, would be Roy Ennis with the Congress on Racial Equality, and Shirley McGill. Roy Ennis and the Congress of Racial Equality did a report investigating the murders, in which they interviewed Shirley McGill, who testified to being the bookkeeper of a satanic cult. And while she was the bookkeeper for this satanic cult, which also engaged in selling drugs, which also engaged in child trafficking, which also engaged in child pornography, as well as organ harvesting and trafficking. And all of this stuff was a byproduct of their satanic rituals and ritual abuse and murders. And she testified to personally witnessing some of the children who were killed in Atlanta, as well as just witnessing countless murders and the whole operations. Not only did she pass polygraph tests, she also gave the same testimony under hypnosis. And
I'm
also the Klan was working with him too.
yeah. None of this surprises me because we look fast forward 20, 30 years later, and there have been accusations of folks using adrenochrome as a way of staying young. So, adrenochrome is harvested from the blood and organs of young kids. There had also been studies that had gone public in the mainstream media about using cells and blood from young adolescent children to help adults to kind of
Regenerate.
recharge their bodies and regenerate. So how would you even know that? Where would you get a study like that? Kids can't volunteer to donate blood. You do know that. They can't do that. So where are you getting this blood to explore and decide that children's blood is healthy and a good option for you to use to keep your old ass self regenerated? You got to get it from somewhere. You getting it from somewhere, and you can't get it legally by getting donations from kids. So
I'm going to ask Adam to drop the link to start allowing folks to join in with us. If you would like to join in and discuss some of these conspiracies, we would love to have you come in and chat. I kind of want to take it back a little bit to the beginning, if that's okay, Kashama, just about when we
No,
had.
it's not okay.
All right.
I'm kidding. No, we got to mix it up. We got to mix it up a little bit.
So
keep the people on their toes.
Shut me up. But just for me, it's a matter of when we are sharing narratives like this, stories about conspiracies that turned out to be true when it came to Black people and how much we suffer in this society. How is it that we have the gall or the audacity to question or criticize or treat folks who are consistently questioning or in parliament about the legitimacy of a well-meaning society in our country? Like, we treat conspiracy, quote unquote, conspiracy theories amongst us like crap. And it is interesting to me when they have every right to question, as crazy and sometimes far out as some of these theories may be. I'm not mad at folks who are traumatized by what this society does, and there's been no resolution for it. And so I'm just always curious about what can we do to start navigating with our folks better.
This is interesting, and this doesn't answer your question, Duke. I want to get back to your question, make sure that it's answered. I just want to share this story a little bit. I got an old uncle, of course. We all got old uncles, but this is my grandmother's oldest brother. And I remember when I was a young boy, he used to always say that the moon landing never happened. And he used to say, they ain't never been on no moon, boy. They fooling y'all. They was out there in the desert somewhere, right? And I already thought he was crazy anyway, but this was just another notch, you know what I'm saying, in my little checkbook of all the crazy things that he had said, in my life. But then the older I got, I came across information that suggested that the first moon landing was possibly a hoax. And they started talking about, the flag was waving on the moon and how there's no gravity on the moon and something like that. I just, no, either the flag was waving or it wasn't. No, it was waving. And they were saying there's no wind on the moon to be blowing it. Like it should just be still in gravity or something like that. So when I saw that, it started making me question, because that was logical. Like, wait, there is no wind on the moon. What's going on? And I immediately thought about my uncle. I said, dang.
I'm sorry. Didn't Buzz Aldrin, wasn't he?
There is solar flares in there that has wind current.
But didn't Buzz Aldrin say that he admitted kind of off to the side that the moon landing never happened? He was one of the astronauts.
I think that might have been what I seen. I know I saw some very compelling, evidence that it may not have happened or that it didn't happen.
Yeah, they chucked it up to him being senile, but he, in some form or fashion, during an interview, I'd have to pull it, but he suggested that it never happened, that he never landed on the moon, one of the astronauts.
So to answer your question, Duke, people who shut down the idea or information around conspiracies, it's no different from the people who shut down the information that you present when you always present this information about black men, about there actually not being more black men in prison than in college, and information around black fathers, the statistics that you share around black fathers, that even when you share this hard evidence, right, a lot of people are like, nah, I don't believe it. No, that's not true, right? The people who shut down conspiracies, they're in the same boat as people who are shutting down that information that you give them, or people who just express this dissonance and shut down receiving any type of factual information that goes against anything that either affirms whiteness or anything that stands a chance to convict whiteness.
What I'm going to suggest real briefly is that when you start to see things that prove your ideas, you need to screen capture, you need to hold it, because information is starting to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Information is starting to disappear offline. You're seeing more censorship. You're seeing YouTube pulling information. You're seeing, so all of these platforms, they pull information down that they don't want you to see. And whoever they are, but information is getting pulled down. I'm going to hit this real briefly because I know we're on time. But Letitia Wright, from, if you just go and see what happened.
Go ahead.
The actress from Black Panther, the actress that played the little sister, posted something on her Twitter page suggesting that we should be questioning the efficacy of the vaccines. She posted a video, and the video was obviously from a Black organization, Black male. I didn't get to see the actual video because before I got to it, Twitter pulled it down, YouTube pulled it down, and all you hear and see now is that folks are dragging her for questioning the efficacy of what's going on with the vaccines. In the meantime, I have a video that I'm going to share. We can share it next time, where we are having information hidden from us about what we can be doing to keep ourselves healthy from COVID in lieu of the vaccine. But you don't see the NIH, Fauci, or the CDC telling you about it. So I'm just saying, if you grab the information, if you see it, you better grab it and hold it, because it does disappear. So
that's definitely true. Yeah. These so-called fact checkers. And, we're in the age of where, like in the crusade against so-called fake news, when all the news, the news has been fake for so long. But this new crusade against so-called fake news has given some powers and entities a lot of,
license to silence. That's
license to silence people, to put the hammer down on people. And it's happening a lot on YouTube. Suri, I don't know why I call her Suri all the time. Well, I call her that because that's what she played on Black Panther. But Letitia, what now?
Letitia Wright.
Letitia Wright. Yeah, she's just like the latest victim of it. Like, they've been censoring Black people on YouTube just for over political stuff, not even with the health. And you can't even mention COVID on certain streams or put it in your title because they only want an approved narrative coming out about it. But that gets us into a lot of the biomedical conspiracies. You was about to say something, dude?
Yes, I was actually going to push us right there, but just before that, I wanted to honor, we mentioned COINTELPRO just earlier, but I wanted to honor a Black person who was a victim of conspiracy, and today is actually the 51-year anniversary of his death and passing. We have Brother Fred Hampton, a powerful leader and abolitionist for Black people in America, and his work was so influential and so harming to the white social constructs and power in this society that they decided to do something about it. And they killed this brother in his home. And we honor and we thank this man, Brother Fred Hampton. And if you all have some other things that you want to say, this would be a great time before we get into our biomedical conspiracies.
No, just take the time to honor that brother and honor his sacrifice,
So, Flat Earth or Dr. Sebi? Dr. Sebi it is.
Well, I mean, Yeah, flat Earth needs to be another conversation because I got some interesting thoughts on flat Earth.
Look, I ain't got time for you. If you're a flat earther, just take a flight.
I'm not a flat earther.
Different
It's just that when I'm walking on the Earth, it's flat.
All right, if you get on the plane high enough, you can see the curve.
But I mean, in space, I'm sure it goes back to being that globe. But I mean, reality can be perception, and there's different levels of reality because there's different levels of perception.
Mm-hmm.
But that's on some spiritual stuff. We'll get. But anyway,
anything flat about these streets. They crash. I mean, they up and down and shifting. The plates are moving in Baltimore. All right, sometimes more than Cali. I feel
Baltimore do got some hills though, not as bad as San Francisco, but Baltimore can be quite hilly. But anyway, Dr. Sebi, speaking of information that's being hid, they waited good till this brother died to start wanting to give him all the smoke, right? Because when he was alive, they took him to court. They did everything they could to discredit him, decades ago, and he beat it. And then they had to stop. Really, they had to keep his name out of their mouth, basically. Like they, and when I say they, I mean so-called people in the healthcare industry, personalities, who knew of him, but would not talk about him because they were afraid to promote him, but they knew they couldn't say anything against him because he could back up his stuff. What are y'all thoughts about Dr. Sebi though?
So I was really sitting here hoping to hear more from you because when it comes to Dr. Sebi, I of course know about the court case when he was taken into New York. He was allegedly charged for practicing without a license and making quote unquote false medical claims about curing AIDS, sickle cell disease, and a few other things. And he beat that case. And I don't know the full metrics of how he won or beat that particular case. But I do know that years later, wait, before you finish, because
go ahead.
I just know that years later after his death, in the Black community that I happen to know about now, like I know about the pro-Black empowerment individuals who, use Dr. Sebi as like this spiritual deity, and then I know the general populace that are just more into today's social networking culture, who are just like, this man was fraudulent. This man didn't do the things that he claimed he did, and I never really knew what to believe on this particular spectrum when it comes to Dr. Sebi. So I was just like, yikes.
Believe the people who read. Believe the people who read before they come out their mouth saying some shit about other Black people. And the rest of them need to sit themselves down.
Why is it a question about the legitimacy of Dr. Sebi? If the court case is documented, what he was accused of, all of the documentation from the court case is there. This man did not have a Western medical license, and yet he beat the court system and the medical community in New York. What is there to debate? That's the kind of stuff that when people talk about he didn't do what he said he could do, he didn't care. He went to court. They were going to, do you know what kind of jail time he would have gotten for that?
Mm-hmm.
You know what kind of jail time? And he beat them. So this is a man who did not have Western training, medical training. He went to court and beat them. He had all of his information, all of his patients, so what is there to debate?
And lab
paperwork. So when people are talking about he didn't do what there's nothing else it's nothing to talk about, because this is a person that's going to argue everything. There's nothing to debate. The information is documented. So the question becomes for me, why is he not here? that to me is the question. Why is a man who was he in his 80s? He was in his 80s.
I think he was just shy of 80.
Just shy of 80. Yeah. Who had gone to court, proved he could cure the diseases he said he could cure, was completely left out of the medical community. Why wasn't he a guest at Hopkins? Why wasn't he a guest at all of these major medical facilities? That's the question we need to be asking.
I think the highest thing that he was invited to talk on was it the Rock Newman show? And so I'm reading on his
Not even
particular.
Oprah had him on, right?
Yeah.
Y'all should see the video of Dr. Sebi. He talks about what Jesse Jackson Jr. did when he started talking about curing HIV. He said Jesse Jackson Jr. was like like he was like got really, really afraid. But that's just one funny video that Dr. Sebi gets out and talks about. But I think it's important to mention that he died in a Honduran jail cell too.
He died in a Honduran jail cell.
I don't know what he was charged with, and he had money.
They didn't have a real charge. They stopped him because he had a lot of money on him, and it was questionable. This is a man that cured all these diseases, and they said he caught the flu or some kind of bug, a cold, in jail and died.
So something that I do know, and I'm glad that I looked it up. So some of the debate about Sebi is that apparently he allegedly made comments that sperm should be green and that women are supposed to menstruate once every 4 years for 10 minutes. And so this is from an article. The name of the article was Dr. Sebi was either a complete fool or a complete fraud, but he was no healer. So this
what they have to do, they have to show that in writing where he said it, or they have to show a link to the video.
A video, right? Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
But it's interesting,
and
like
honestly,
the way that this man's narrative is shaped outside of the work that he's done with his patients and the work that he's done in the court. But everything that we absorb about this particular brother now is based on social commentary from articles and what the Breakfast Club has to say. Like, it's not based on medical data.
Well, part of it is we're lazy as a culture. We don't want to do the research. We'd rather for someone to feed it to us, to tell us, and to follow the popular narrative. We don't want to do the work, most people. They're not going to do that.
I'm going to tell you something. I mean, yeah, that's true. And I definitely agree with you. Another part of that, too, is there is almost like a hunger or thirst when you are down and dragging a black man or a black person, especially for going against the plantation. There are people who are just ready and willing to eat that up, sop it up like a biscuit. Mm-hmm. Yep. You don't have to go too far. You can make up something wild and crazy with no proof. Just like that article. Why would you write an article quoting somebody and you don't cite your source? What type of journalist are you? God, the integrity. Come on. And then and people who take, you know what I'm saying? So you're talking about people who don't have integrity, and you don't have to have integrity when you are dragging or slandering a black person.
Right. I shared this story before, but I know that many of us have got to have these stories somewhere where individuals. I have a friend who was diagnosed with cancer, was given a terminal date saying you only got so much longer to live, you'll never have children, blah 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 blah, it's over for you. And so she left from Western medicine, and she just stopped taking it, and she went on a alkaline diet and started doing nothing but herbal teas and mixtures. Years later, this woman is still alive, has 2 beautiful children that are like 8 and 6 right now, and is completely in remission for cancer. And it reminds me of another thing with Dr. Joy DeGruy, when she just talked about the specific planets and how Pluto at one point was no longer labeled a planet. I believe they're making it back one now. But the way that white infrastructure talks about their science is they won't say that science was wrong. Mm-hmm. They'll say that the science changed, mm-hmm. and not acknowledge the fallacy or the wrongness in their particular arguments and diagnostics. Like, there's a way that white infrastructure and white power consolidates in order to shape the narrative of how we talk and speak and conceptualize their success and failures by not calling them failures.
And now, to that point, though, it's like we've been doing things under a white rubric for so long. Like we have been eating, we from slavery to now, we've been eating, according to how Europeans have kind of, influenced us to eat, because they've we had to eat what they gave us for the most part. But who knows what color our sperm is really supposed to be? Be honest with you, if we haven't had an alkaline diet for 1,000 years as a people, if we haven't been engaging in this type of plant-based lifestyle or reality, who knows how our bodies are really supposed to function when they are at its optimal?
Well, I see we got a guest in here. We got wonderful sister Sonia Ross. Love to see you again. Tell us what's up.
Greetings to everyone. I'm enjoying the conversation. I wanted to speak very briefly when you said, Duke, about what happened to that person you knew about the cancer. Last year in April of 2019, I started having horrible pains from fibroids. I'll be honest, women know about these things, excessive bleeding, crippling pain. I started, taking these herbals. Well, first of all, I didn't know what was going on. I wound up going to the hospital, and every time I told them they told me I had the fibroids. They really acted like it was no big deal. I just had to get used to it. They had no solutions for me. I figured out a couple of things in myself to make my symptoms a little bit better through herbs. Fast forward to this year, again, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm having more pain. I finally wind up going to the doctor, and I've had to fight to get to see this person. And it was a Black woman who was a surgeon. And she told me the only solution to my problem was to take my uterus out. And I said, no, I do not want to take my uterus out. She's like, but I said, because the fibroids looked abnormal and they thought it was a possibility that there was cancer. It wasn't cancer. And it went back and forth a little bit. But she told me my likelihood of cancer was extremely low, but we can just take your uterus out anyway, just to be sure. Oh. And I said, and then after you've experimented on me and found out that I don't have cancer, I don't have my uterus. She said, but your symptoms will be gone. And so I had to pray about it. And for the last 2 months, I've been seeing an acupuncturist. My fibroids are shrinking. My health is better. I haven't had any pain. I had to fight to get this information. I had to fight. Can you guys still hear me?
Wow.
Yeah. So I had to fight to get this information. And to your point about what you guys were saying earlier about it, not only do people want to drag other people who can help them, but our people are so confused and they're in such a fearful space. They will listen to what these people say and they'll take advice that will kill them. If I had let these people, if I had really not been in my right mind, I would have been so clutched with fear, I would have gone along with what they said, but I knew better. And I knew there was a way, and I've always trusted in God's power. And I said, you know what? I always believed, even from when I was little, that, everything that could cure us is on this earth. And so I kept on going, and I found someone who could help me. And I see this woman, she's an acupuncturist, a Black lady, every week. And, they doctors told me that there was nothing I could do. The fibroids, I would always have them, and I just had to deal with it, and that eventually I'd need a hysterectomy. So I just wanted to share that, because when I hear these stories, it just makes me angry, because, they're telling our people these things like they're like nothing can help them. And while I don't follow Dr. Sebi, I don't follow his information, there's many people like him whose information I do follow, and there is hope out there for us to get ourselves well. And so I just wanted to share my experiences.
Thank you for that, Sonia.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah, that your story, not the exact story, but I'm noticing that like hysterectomies are being performed a lot more, it seems like more often. And because I'm not around white women like that, I don't know if that's happening to them. But if we look into it, it's something that I'm willing to look into, and I'm willing to bet that I think this is something that they're doing mostly to Black women.
They do it to women across the board.
They do. I saw an article probably, when I was in my teens, or heard on the news when I was teens, and it stayed in my mind. They said hysterectomies are the most overperformed procedure in the United States. Most of them are unnecessary. And they were saying that like in the 90s.
It's big business. Profitable.
Absolutely. And they take our tissue, they take our cells, they sell it, they do a medical experimentation on it. It's crazy. And the only difference I think is to Bliss's point about it being women across the board, I think they take Black women's uteruses out earlier, and they take white women's uteruses out later in life.
Okay.
Thank
Because
you.
that's what seems so unusual for me, because I notice it's more younger women than than you would think that are getting hysterectomies today. And like I say, I don't have the experience of being around a lot of white women to know what's going on with them, health wise. But speaking of that, though, Henrietta Lacks, that happened to her as far as the cells from her uterus. Actually, she was given the same procedure, hysterectomy, and her cells has become like the backbone of the pharmaceutical industry.
Mhm.
And I think, Duke, you know more about what the fate of her descendants. I think recently they've gotten some payoff or something.
Oh,
I'm not actually sure about the fate of this. I do know that there was multiple pushes for her family and relatives in order to receive compensation for uh, the use of Henrietta cells. But to my knowledge, I believe the compromise is more of an institution for individuals. Henrietta Lacks institution, if you will, as opposed to paying off the family directly, more like a
right,
charity particular
right.
institution. Thank you so much for joining us, Sonia. We're going to move on with particular discussion and topics. I found the alleged video. I wish I was able to share it here. We have Brother Bongani, but I found the alleged video with Dr. CB, but I also wanted to mention
Hey.
that one second, Bongani. I also wanted to mention 1 second
Okay.
that it's interesting to me that Dr. Ben Carson, who's a downright fool when it comes to everything else,
Blank
it
me.
is a traumatized brother dealing with white supremacist Smith, and it is completely enwrapped in that particular culture. But you cannot take away his medical accomplishments in infrastructure.
No, you can't.
You can't do that. So it's like, as much as we want to criticize individuals for roundabout statements or whatever else, like they have things that they are experts at, things that white people could not do and did not know how to do before their involvement.
Mm.
But we got Brother Bongani in. What you got to say?
Hey, you guys. How's everybody doing?
We're
Happy to
doing
see you
good. I'm
guys.
good.
I want to show you guys a couple of things that I have that I definitely recommend us all to take, because the food that we are eating nowadays does not contain any mineral content. There are certain things that, because we are melanated beings, we require. So I'm going to show you guys. Hopefully, this works out okay. Uh, so these are actually, you know what? I'm going to do them one at a time here quickly, and I'll kind of explain them briefly. This one is magnesium, and so there are, I think, 15 or 17 vitamins and minerals that we require daily for normal body function and for homeostasis within our bodies. Magnesium is beautiful for memory, for brain function, because it is a mineral that is designed to pass the blood-brain barrier, and it basically nourishes the brain. So if somebody was very forgetful, like for instance, I'll give you an example. I used to have to write a grocery list every time I would go to the grocery store to remember exactly what I was going to get. I started taking magnesium within 3 months. Now, that was a couple years ago, but within 3 months, I no longer required to write a list. And I don't write lists now. I can totally remember. I can totally remember because magnesium was, because, like I said, if you're not getting these, then you're not going to be getting the basic vitamins and minerals and nutrients that we need for, function. The next one is going to be your B complex. Let me see if that's. Hold on a sec. Oh, wait.
Hmm.
And when you, this one is, I think there are 12 B vitamins that we have to take in. So when you take a B vitamin, you kind of want to get the complex, because that's going to include all 12 of them. You also want to take sulfur. Okay. So that one looks like, oop, I'm not very good at this. Okay, sulfur, particularly for African people, because sulfur is great for our hair, it's great for skin, it's great for soft tissue development. It's also great for soft tissue healing. So when we are active, our muscles get torn very
Actually,
easily. Very, very
I can
tiny
take it.
tears, you know what I mean? No big deal. Our body repairs them.
That's interesting. That's why
Huh?
they have the
You take
sulfur
sulfur?
in
Right
the
Yeah,
on,
hair
give me
right on.
too.
hair
Sulfur is
product,
good.
the hair
Hmm.
grease.
Yeah, I take it.
Yeah.
Right,
Thank you
right.
so much, Magani. I would love, because we actually, I don't know
Another
if you
good
saw it.
one, if you had oh,
I was saying we
huh?
actually had someone in the
Go ahead.
comments
I
say
didn't
that
hear
their
you.
grandmother needs that thanks. I would love, as always, if you could just take a moment of your time to make a quick list to put in our comment section for our viewers. That'd be really, really great because
Sure,
part of your video was also breaking up.
sure, of course.
Mhm. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
really? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, you
your vi-
guys. Y'all be
thank
well.
you.
Thank you. Okay, let me just do this because he just opened up a great door.
Mhm.
All of those things that he recommended are great. One of the main things that I was hoping he was going to get to that has already been studied in Europe, and because we're talking about vaccines now and this push for vaccines, but what's happening is the one of the main issues in the United States for us, and specifically for Black people, is the lack of vitamin D.
Hmm.
Um, and we're not being tested correctly about that. And one of the reasons why I want to really bring this up is that there is a representative named Glenn Grothman. I think he's a representative from Wisconsin who last month implored in front of the House that the House start to talk more about vitamin D because they have the studies that show that vitamin D, the use of vitamin D, is helping to stave off COVID. So while we're being pushed to take this vaccine, we're not talking about vitamin D. I've been talking about this actually on Everybody Loves Bliss, the podcast, since we started the season. The numbers for us are deplorable in terms of the amount of vitamin D that we have in our bodies. And one of the things that Black people have done, we've grown up, and a lot of times we were told as kids, if you're darker, get out of the sun. You don't want to get darker, that kind of bull crap colorism that we deal with. Well, that has been counteractive to our health because what studies have shown is that the darker you are, the more vitamin D you get. And the immune system is dependent on vitamin D, and it's critical. Now, white folks over in Europe are using it to stave off COVID. While we're sitting around and Dr. Fauci is not telling us, and the CDC is not telling us, there is a person who is part of the political landscape who's been trying to push that. And again, his name is Representative Glenn Grothman, who's been trying to push this. So that information about what we need in terms of supplements is really, really important. And while we quietly don't know it, let me just tell y'all this, and I'm going to wrap this up. The prices for vitamin D have gone up almost 100% since April. So there's something that we're not being told about this particular vitamin that most of us are critically low in. Black people specifically, 70 to 80% of us are low in vitamin D. And here we are in the middle of winter, and we wonder why the numbers for flus raise. Well, people come in, it gets darker earlier, you're not getting that access, and more of us are going to get sick. So I'm just going to give you that bit. Thank you, Bagani, for the information you gave. Folks, you got to do the research. You've got to do the research because it's there.
A good
You just
person
made
to
me.
follow these days now that Dr. Sebi is gone. And also this brother, he's real good with supplements as far as helping you navigate measurements and dosages for supplements and herbs and stuff like that. But Kareem, the herbalist, if you go on YouTube and look
Oh,
for Cycles of Life, brother
okay.
Kareem, the herbalist, he also does business classes too and teach people
Okay.
how to start LLCs and all that stuff. But I get a lot of knowledge from that brother when it comes to just supplements and herbs. And he also knows things about the diet too, but he's really, really good with the herbal supplements.
And just to remind people, to bring it back to the conspiracy, it's one thing for that information for there to be a question about the information, but to know that your government is aware of the studies and knows, and the studies are all over Europe now. There's no question about what could stave off COVID. The fact that they know and the information isn't getting to us, and it's critical, especially for us because our numbers are lower. So when we bring it back to the whole conspiracy theory, see, there's no question about what's going on. There is a war against us. We just don't always know where it's coming from. It's coming from all different places. So just to bring that back to the conspiracy.
You actually just made me laugh about something in my childhood. I remember a beverage that I had loved growing up, and it just went away. It disappeared. And I know there's supposed to be a relaunch
Oh
now with
Lord.
Sunny D. Sunny D, which
Mm.
was always promoted as something with high in vitamin D. And I loved that beverage growing up, and it just went
Oh,
away
really?
from my communities. Like I don't like it was just gone. So that's
Sunny
interesting.
D might have been a little counteractive with all that sugar. It got
But it
Like,
was
I didn't
there.
know it
I
was a
loved
healthy
it.
drink.
But you know, when
Um,
you said something you used to drink when you were a child, I thought you were about to bust out with some Mondo or some cream soda Fago or something
no.
toxic. I was about to say,
Um,
Lord, they bringing it back.
I
But
didn't
no,
know
I
about
was
that.
actually looking through here because two things, just a general housekeeping, because we're getting ready to wrap up, y'all. But we are currently at 321 subscribers on our YouTube page, and we want to
Wow.
thank and love on
Woo!
each one of you. And I would ask, this is an ask from me, and maybe the team will support. It would be really, really great if we can somehow reach just 400 subscribers by the end of the year. It'd be really, really great to come into 2021 saying that we got 400 subscribers. We would love that. If you could push for that, if you enjoy our content, share it with your friends. And I also want to leave off that we had a post on October 2nd titled Queen Sugar, the bitter relationship between Black folks and diabetes. That particular post, I do know that we had guests come in to talk again about diets and things that you can use in order to build up your immune system. We're talking about vaccines. If you are interested in more of this discussion, please go back to that particular content video. And there should be another one about diets in general, where we had a friend of Kashama's come in to talk on that particular subject matter. So again, we're just building up off of our previous discussions. And if you want to find some ways to treat yourself better, we have the content.
If you don't know whether you want to subscribe to Melanated Solutions Media or not, you ain't black.
I'm done. Logging out.
And I mean it.
Right now.
God, I mean it.
Done. Okay.
Thank you, Shama. Okay. I got nothing for that.
Well, I mean, we can start to wrap things up. I mean, my final words are conspiracies are real. Just ask all the brothers that are in jail right now who have been charged with some form of conspiracy charges. So if they can charge us with conspiracy, then you definitely know that it's a real thing. So with it being a real thing, let's stop treating it like it's fake, and also be vigilant. Honestly, be vigilant, because I mean, a lot of things, and I'm not gonna. This is not victim blaming, but we can prevent a lot of things if we are vigilant and if we are governing ourselves according to the current reality and not the fantasy.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I'll add to that, be vigilant, grab the information, do the research, question, look at both sides, and stop depending on this media and these trends to give you your information, folks. You got to search for yourself. You're just not going to get it waiting for mainstream media to tell you, and they're hiding information from you anyway. We just discussed numbers of ways that that's happening now. So that's all I can tell you.
Yeah. I don't have much else to say other than do your best to connect with your local farmers markets, that Black people who are doing their own thing. Try to learn how to grow your own food, prepare your own meals. The more you're doing in-house, the better off you are when it comes to building up your immune system and dealing with what we got to deal with medically. And when it comes to conspiracy theories in general, we know that there's a conspiracy against Black people in America.
All right. With that being said, y'all, this has been another wonderful broadcast. We appreciate each and every one of you that viewed, each and every one of you that came through in the chat with your comments, and especially those of you who joined us in video and
Thank you,
contributed
Bongani and
to the
Sonia Rose.
dialogue. So we will definitely see you next Friday with a BMX live stream. And what's going to be the topic again, Duke, next Friday?
So that is a health education live stream, and that particular discussion is going to be trying to remember the name. I have it's like a play on words. I wish my producer would just save me right now, but I don't remember the play on words, but the topic is the matter of the importance of finding alternative ways to connect with friends and family during these holidays. And when it comes to COVID, we know that we have to deal with COVID in a safe way, but we don't have to be in complete solitude when it comes to that. Make the extra effort to find alternative ways to connect with your friends and family. So please join us in with that discussion and offer your ideas as we also share some things that we know about and why this particular thing is important. We can't afford to be alone in our holiday season. Too many of us separate, and there's a lot of health adversities because of that. So we would love for you all to join for that. That is actually going to be the last particular live stream for the year. So come in with that, I believe, or am I lying? Is there another one after that? I believe that's it. I'm sorry, that's the last health education live stream. That's the last health education live stream. There will be one more multimedia solutions, and we'll have Bliss in for that one before the holidays and the end of 2020. Thank the Lord.
Peace, melanated family. Y'all be easy until next time.
All right.